because you just have to be conscious of how you're interacting with people. So yeah, massaging, sadly enough, can be a form of sexual harassment. Lewd jokes, gestures, cornering, trapping, blocking, stalking. I know that sometimes I say some of these things, like I'm going to say the next one, sexual assaults and rapes, exposing oneself. I mean, I know it seems funny because you think, wow, that would never happen in the workplace. It happens every day. I have at least 10 rapes on my desk right now, sexual assaults. And I'm not talking about, I'm talking pretty serious cases. You'd be surprised what can happen in the workplace. So people are cornered. Again, that's not happening here. It's not the majority of our complaints, but it does happen, and it happens pretty regularly. Remarks about a person's physical characteristics, remarks about sexual activity, the sexual jokes, the comments, repeated requests for dates. Note that a lot of these words have to do with repetition and severity. Going back to the single or second to, when the person says no and you stop, isn't going to get you into problems. Repeated requests for dates, i.e., we know people ask people out on dates. Many of us meet our other halves or whatever at work. It's repeated. If I'm telling you no and you're continuing, you're in essence almost stalking me, that's when you're going to run into a problem. Like Urkel? Urkel? Oh. You don't look old enough to know about Urkel, but, we're going to let you slide on that. I had to think about that. I'm like, Urkel? Who's Urkel? That's a long time ago, that show. Obviously, again, let's repeat, the inappropriate nonverbal sexual acts, displaying of posters, those email and internet. Please be careful with the email, the Blackberries. You would be surprised at what some people, they don't realize. We can get all of that. I've preserved people's Blackberries so many times. I've had people file complaints and we're getting their whole hard drives from their employer. They don't even realize that the employer has the ability to do that stuff. I mean, the whole entire hard drive. When you are suing these companies or vice versa when you're suing, at that point, the employer is not going to care about spending, a couple of $1,000s to get some techie who, would love to just do this for fun, to look at everything that's happened on a hard drive over a period of time. So just please watch the electronic media. It's very dangerous. And it makes our job very easy when people do that, because we have the evidence. Letters, notes, emails, unwanted personal gifts and attention, obscene gestures, ogling or leering. We were talking about leering, No, we didn't say looking, leering. And believe it or not, over time, those things are easily defined. And of course, the last one, exposing oneself, which, I don't think we're going to have any problems with that here. But obviously, that is that clearly is sexual harassment. There is no one situation. Okay, I have to stop using those. I have two here that I have to watch. There's no single situation that constitutes sexual harassment. Harassment can be direct. It can be indirect. It can be a supervisor, again, we talked about. It can be a coworker. But you have to be aware of some very important things about sexual harassment. The more severe the behavior is, the less likely we're going to see repetition. So we're not expecting someone who was assaulted to go back and say, well, I was assaulted twice. Things like that, usually you're going before a judge immediately, automatically. It's, as long as you engage in any kind of extreme behavior, then obviously it's already considered a violation, because the effect on the person is obviously going to be already clear. You don't need 2 or 3 of those to, you're probably not going back to that workplace. You're not going to want to work with that person anymore, et cetera, et cetera. So just remember, the more severe the behavior, we don't need repetition. The less responsibility the person has. We talked about that, to object. I don't have to object if you grope me. It's pretty obvious that that's obviously, not only is it illegal in terms of employment discrimination, it's criminal. So quite often we might have a criminal complaint traveling simultaneous to or civil complaint, which is not unusual at all. Inappropriate and offensive behaviors are labeled by, and this is in your book, this is very important, are labeled by the recipient, regardless of how they are intended. He gave a perfect example. If you make a comment, it doesn't matter what you intended. You might not have intended to offend me. But if I'm offended and it was inappropriate, then it's illegal. And that's a good thing. Remember that. When people make those judgments, say, okay, let's compare it to other places. I can tell you about them. I did training. I went to Brazil to help them write this sexual harassment policy. They were in disaster in their workplace. These policies exist, and they've improved the workplace in this country. They've made it better for people to work together. We've done studies across the country. Men and women are working together in a way that they have never worked before together, and in a way that happens in no other country in the world. There are countries all over right now that are studying our policies. Again, Brazil came, China came. In China, women are abused in the workplace. I sat with the consulate at the UN and talked to them about sexual harassment, their policies, because you know what? At the end of the training, he's walking up to me, and I thought, oh my God, this guy's going to go nuts on me. I don't want to hear this. What are you telling me? He walked up and he said, you know, one day I walked out, my wife was sitting on her bed crying. I didn't know she'd been sexually harassed for 2 years. And he said, until I listened to her story and what her experiences were at work, I didn't even understand it. I would tell jokes, we'd be on the highway, we'd be screaming ladies out. And he said because of this experience that he went through with his wife, it made him look at these situations differently. Doesn't mean he's not still going to hang out with the boys and do what he does, or with his girls and do stupid things, but he just realizes that he has to be more thoughtful about his interacting with people and respectful when he's at work. So you know what? I think the laws have done great for this country. I think it has made it a better place. Let's see, what else do we have to cover? I want to make sure I cover everything. Oh, great. Leading into this, what are the effects of sexual harassment? Embarrassment, guilt, powerlessness, anger, fear, withdrawal. Many people quit their jobs. Many people file workers' comp cases. And let's get into things that really cause these problems. Litigation. They're going to find out about my agency. They're going to find out about the EEOC, and they're going to file a complaint. And once your boss has to litigate and hire that lawyer at $1,500 an hour and come sit across the table from me, there's a huge issue. So litigation and agency proceedings are really something that employers do not like and are quite problematic. Employee dissatisfaction and arrest. In a workplace where sexual harassment is going on, there's tensions, there's dissension, it's an uncomfortable workplace. People don't want to be there. Factions are drawn, the people who are for the person, who are against the person. It really creates a really difficult workplace. And that's why most employers want to work these problems through early on. Because when it falls, again, I mean, I've had workplaces where 4 people quit. 3 people quit because they thought whatever was going on. It really creates a very difficult work environment. Absenteeism. People calling sick all the time. Employees, in terms of employees, don't usually realize what an effect this has on business. Absenteeism is one of the most disastrous things for business because you're still paying out, but you're losing that person. Disruption of the workplace. You don't have unions, but employee relations and union problems. Insurance problems. Most employers now have to take out insurance for these claims because once the judges started giving $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in damages to complainants, employers couldn't afford it. So now your employer has to take out insurance so that people can learn how to speak appropriately to each other. Or so that if they get sued when they don't, they can pay it. So employers now have to pay insurance and things like that on things like employment discrimination. Loss of goodwill, and of course then there's human costs. Quite often you lose really good employees because they don't want to work in that type of environment. I just settled a case where an employer sat across from me and begged the employee to come back. It was one of their most productive employees in a very difficult work environment. The person went to a competitor. I don't need this. I don't need this kind of work environment. So remember, you can also lose good people, and I'm sure we don't want to lose any good brokers today. I'm not going to talk as much about supervisory responsibility because I don't think you really have supervisors per se in the traditional sense. But the material is here. It's important to look at it because you know what your supervisor should be doing if you need to go and talk to them about sexual harassment, and they have the packet. They know what they're supposed to be doing. So again, I'm not going to do too much on that. You have also a supervisor liability. Again, how do you prevent sexual harassment? You know, hopefully your employer will have a sexual harassment policy or some type of policy in place. Here we go. Most important one, be a role model. If you're walking around and you're acting inappropriately and being inappropriate, remember, that's what you're going to get. And that's what people are going to see, and that's what's going to be a reflection of who you are. And I don't think that you want that to be who you are. So again, be a role model. Again, we're not saying that you have to be prude. I don't think there's anyone in my office right now, if you come, that you say Joyce is prude.